Having an exceptional relationship with your spouse affects every single aspect of your life and is crucial for experiencing your dream life together. I'm Rob Murgatroyd.
And I'm Kim Murgatroyd. Listen in on our honest, filter-free conversations as we navigate life and business together without killing each other.
You'll learn by osmosis how to transform the friction you feel in your relationship into a purposeful foundation that will allow you to grow together.
Welcome to the Friday Podcast.
Kimberly, church bells are ringing. Murgatroyd, happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday.
We are going to take the big leap today. Have you ever taken the big leap? In your whole life, have you taken a big leap?
I was a gymnast.
Okay.
So I've taken really big leaps, and I've taken really big leaps on a 4-inch wide beam, which I think up-levels the leap as it is leaped onto a 4-inch beam.
I remember when you did a fitness competition, and as part of the fitness competition, or one of the divisions of the fitness competition, was you flipping up and down, which was interesting to me. I don't know what
it's not really the division
what's it called?
of it.
It's not called the flip division. What's it called?
Fitness division.
It's the fitness. By the way, it's the worst name in the world call what you do fitness.
No, it's not, because it's the whole thing is it's a 2-minute routine that you have to put together. And so you have to use your skills. Some people go out and they dance, and you have to show your physical fitness. You have to do strength moves and balance moves, and like it's high energy, so you can't poop out by the end of it. And so I did, but I was a gymnast, and so mine leaned
let me tell you
that way.
Let me tell you why you're completely wrong. Okay, this is why you're wrong. Did Arnold Schwarzenegger run? By the way, I don't think it's Schwarzenegger. I think it's Schwarzenegger. Did he run the President's Council for Physical Fitness when you were a little girl?
Yes, and you did push-ups and sit-ups and all of those things.
Okay, so
and that's what I did in my routine.
I was a member of Arnold Schwarzenegger's President's Council for Physical Fitness. There was no girl doing what you did on that stage.
All
okay?
right, honey.
So we'll move on, but I just want you to just make a mental note that
I have taken a big leap.
Because what I realize is that you and our editing team are conspiring against me because because these are recorded, you are capturing things that I say that I said that I didn't say, and then you're sharing it with the world. So
So now you're cautious?
I have interviewed many people through the years, and I can always tell when there's a controversial subject because they're measured with their words. And I used to be like, man, that girl's really guarded, or that guy's really guarded. But now I understand why they are, because there's people like you that go back in and say, let's roll the tape. Speaking of roll the tape, today we are here for a part 2-ish episode of the last one where we talked about the book, The Big Leap, and you promised that we would be back to talk about a problem called the upper limit problem, which clearly you have, and you're going to talk about why you have it and what it is and how I don't have that issue.
Oh, no, you're perfect. First of all, let me just say, I'm so glad that I listened to my gut and said, we're not talking about this today. We'll do it on the next podcast, because I read the book, and that's helpful when you're talking about a subject matter. So the upper limit, so the book, The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks, we talked about some of it with the zone of genius on the last episode. And with the big leap, the zone of genius is one thing, but what prevents you from getting into the zone of genius is something called the upper limit. Think of the upper limit as a glass ceiling. So you're going along just fine, and you're making progress towards your goals. And maybe, he has 4 zones, right? So you have the zone of incompetence. I'm not going to go through what they all are right now, but zone of incompetence, you can figure that one out, right? You don't know what the hell you're doing. Zone of competence, you're competent at it. Zone of excellence, maybe you're really good at something and you make good money doing it. And it's not your zone of genius. Zone of genius is where we want to go, right? Zone of genius is what we talked about last time, where it's kind of this sweet spot between doing something you really love to do something that is your greatest gift to the world. And I'm going to add into it something that you're probably good at, because I don't think it would be your greatest gift if you weren't good at it.
Greatest
right?
contribution.
Greatest contribution. Yeah. So that's the zone of genius, and that's where you want to go. But what your upper limit is, it's kind of like, when you're feeling really good and you're in flow and you're making progress and you're maybe like, let's use diet because this is an easy one. You start losing weight, you start feeling good in your skinny jeans, and you're like, yeah, I'm feeling good. And then what do? You go out and you eat like pizza and cupcakes.
Let me jump in here because I want to give the book definition.
What, you didn't like
this.
mine? Mine's like a kindergartner definition.
Your definition is great. It's a bit anecdotal for my taste right now. I want to have
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We're going to get through this. I want to give the actual definition from the book so you can hear it out of his mouth. Each of us has an inner thermostat setting that determines how much love, success, and creativity that we allow ourselves to enjoy. And when we exceed that setting, we do something to sabotage ourselves, something to cause us to drop back into the old familiar zone where we felt secure. This setting usually gets programmed in early childhood. Okay, continue.
All right. So like I was saying, you're losing weight, all is going good, and then you fucking sabotage yourself by going back into old patterns and behaviors. Why? Because you hit that thermostat of where your comfort zone is, right? So this is like another kind of comfort zone where if you get too far outside it, you will shrink yourself back to pull back and go in. So this ultimate thing that you want, this ultimate success in whatever, and like what I love about what he talks about in relation to the upper limit, we're not just talking about money. He's talking about, yes, success, business success, financial success, but he's also talking about, as you mentioned, love, so relationships, friendships, and your creativity, which is creativity, innovation, and all the other things. So your upper limit guards all of it. And this was so mind-bending for me. Like I as I was listening to this book, I'm blowing Rob up because I'm like, oh my God, I just figured out what my problem is.
I found another problem.
And it's a really interesting thing because, okay, so imagine you're in your zone of excellence, you're doing really good, you're successful, but you want to go to that next level, whether it's in your relationship or whatever it's in. And you start working towards it, right? You hit that ceiling, that glass ceiling, you don't know it's there, and you do something to self-sabotage and to bring yourself back down because you don't want to get too big, right? Those things you hit are called barriers. So you hit a barrier, something happens that triggers you to put that glass ceiling in place. So he has 4 barriers. All right, so there are 4 barriers, okay? So barriers are based on fear and false belief. They are what is literally holding you back from breaking through that upper limit or glass ceiling and going to your zone of genius. So this is something I highly recommend you read the book. It's going to be easier, but I'm going to give you this. Barrier 1. Barrier 1 is feeling fundamentally flawed. Okay, remember this is a fear and false belief. You feel fundamentally flawed. Your false belief is I cannot expand to my full potential, my full creative genius because there's something wrong with me.
All right, I want to jump in there because I got that one. Okay, so I
own it.
Yeah, I got that one. When you said that, this is one of these books where when you read it, you go, okay, he's given examples of like, Bill Clinton becomes the president and then he sabotages the very thing he spent his whole life aiming towards with a sex scandal with Miss Monica Blue Dress Lewinsky. And, he gives another example. The book is, I think 10, 15 years old, so it's a bit dated with the examples, but he gives another example of Boris Becker, the tennis player who wins Wimbledon, and then he fires his coach, and then he comes back to Wimbledon or doesn't even make it to Wimbledon. He's like 37th place, right? So when I first read the book years ago, I'm like, it's a broad, you're taking a broad stroke at, every single problem from the president to Wimbledon and saying this is the problem. But If you take the time to go back into the book and really look at these foundational things of, how he intertwined all of these things together, it begins to start to make sense, because there will be something that'll hit you right between the eye, and this one of being fundamentally flawed was like, I get this vision of like a Mission Impossible, rifleman with a scope. Like that one was like aimed right in my head. I was like, okay, I got that one. Now, why do I feel fundamentally flawed? Who the fuck knows? If I had to take a guess, I always felt, growing up in like an alcoholic home, with an abusive father, I always felt that like everybody was looking at me as the kid who was fucked up. There were times where I came to school with a black eye, but nobody talked about the black eye. So I went through my childhood feeling like everybody is looking at me and I'm broken.
Did you feel like maybe there was something wrong with you? That's why your dad drank, or that's why he hit you, because there was something wrong with you?
No,
so you didn't take that on?
Not on the conscious level. It was more about like I felt.
Rob's like, well, I didn't until now.
Until now, yeah. I mean, it was like the emperor's new clothes for me. I always felt like I was the kid walking in the room that was naked, but nobody said anything about it. Now, how much of this was true? Kids ignore lots of things, and I could have had two heads and maybe a kid didn't even notice I had two heads, but to me it was real. My point is that whatever the reason is that I felt fundamentally flawed, and I'm just giving you an example of what I think it could have been, who the fuck knows? And it could be a confluence of 87 other things.
But it doesn't actually matter. So I'm going to say something with this, and you may or may not agree with this, and I don't care because I have the mic. And I don't mean you, I mean the listener.
Oh, I was going to say, I got the off button to the mic.
No, this might be argued, but I think a lot of people spend so much energy trying to figure out where the fundamentally flawed came from, instead of doing what he's saying, which is shine the fucking light on it and move on. Shine the light on it and go, oh, this is a fear or false belief, that you have a false belief that you are flawed. First of all, we're all goddamn flawed, right? Like not one of us doesn't have a flaw, but you are not fundamentally flawed. Like you have a belief somewhere in there that you are not enough. You have a belief that, you're not good enough, strong enough, or whatever all the enoughs are. And so instead of spending your life sitting on a therapist's couch trying to unwind why you feel this way, you shine the light on it and you go, yeah, no. Okay. So you acknowledge it's a false belief. I'm not saying don't do therapy or whatever. I'm saying don't put all of your energy there. Put your energy, like read this book and put your energy into figuring and into shining the light and interrupting the pattern, because the barrier comes with a pattern of behavior. The barrier comes with a pattern of behavior. So you have to start looking at your own behavior and saying, oh, this behavior right now is because I'm hitting a barrier of not feeling good enough and I'm about to shrink. I'm not going to do that this time. And you stop the behavior. Wait, I'll give you examples when we get to mine. I have buckets of examples.
Well, I want to jump into the fundamentally flawed one because this is one that I have. I don't feel like I have the other three, but I'm sure that you have one of them, and I'm sure people listening are going to identify.
You can have more than one. You don't have to have more than one. There's 4, and you can have more than one.
Well, think about this, right? So as I think about being fundamentally flawed, when I am in a state of feeling fundamentally flawedness, how much do I really want to go for it? Do you know what I mean? Like, how much do I say, there's no level of I'm worthy, I can do this, I'm going to rise above it, because that feeling of fundamentally being flawed is the barrier that makes me go, I'm going to drop back into it because I'm one of those kids. I'm the kid that comes from this place, and I don't belong in that place because I'm fundamentally flawed. So why would I ever make the big leap? Why would I ever jump through this thing? The only reason why I would is to solve this problem, and to his point about how to solve the problem, because I think this is important. Because as I was listening to this, I kept saying to myself, okay, got it. How the fuck do I fix it?
No, I kept telling Rob, I was like, Rob, I got all the barriers, I got all my problems, but how the hell do I fix it?
Okay, so he definitely does tell you in how to fix it, but it's kind of a paragraph. You know, it's like, for me, the one fundamental flaw he has with this book, how do you fix it? So he said, there's a couple of sentences in there, and it says the upper limit problem is unsolvable in its ordinary state of consciousness. Okay, so let's take a second. Let's dissect this. Let's use this fundamentally flawed part of the upper limit problem. In my consciousness of being fundamentally flawed, there's not a damn thing I can do about it, because that is how I'm perceiving myself, that is how I'm behaving, and that's how I'm defining myself. It's solvable only with a leap of consciousness. Well, how do you get that leap of consciousness? The way you get the leap of consciousness is it must be dissolved. It must be dissolved by shining a light on the awareness, which is what we're doing right now. We're saying, okay, I got this fucking thing. I got this thing where I feel like I'm fundamentally flawed. That rings true for me. Okay, what am I doing? Oh, I'm starting to feel like I'm growing right now. Like, I had somebody, I have to be cryptic about how I say this, but I had somebody who reached out to me last week from a pretty famous...
Don't give too many details. You suck at this.
A pretty famous person out in the world. And she said, you know, hey, we should work together on XYZ project. And I didn't fucking call her back. And I did not follow through with the thing that I said I was going to follow through on. And if you know me, you know that I can't stand to have an open loop. You know that I can't stand, if I say I'm going to do something, I am going to fucking do it. Like, there's nobody around me who's going to say, oh, Rob said he's going to do this and he never followed through. That is not me. But Kim pointed out, hey, did you ever follow through with such and such person? And I'm like, no,
this would be a massive opportunity in his zone of genius, and he didn't follow through.
And if I look back and I think about it, if I really am honest, I felt like that was a world that was too big for me. And I didn't belong in that world, or I didn't have what it takes to step into that world. And it's all around this fundamentally flawed problem. Okay, so what does all this mean? What this means is that if you identify with the next three that Kim's about to give you, and we'll go a bit faster now, the only way you can solve it, because I know your brain right now is going, I got that one, how do I fix it? The only way you can solve it is by having the conscious awareness and creating new enlightenment around the issue.
Okay, but let me put that into real words. The only way to solve this is to see the behavior. I felt insecure, so I didn't follow through, because God help me, if I got that opportunity, it would be too big for me and that room's too big. Acknowledge the behavior, and then you have to acknowledge that that is a fear or false belief. That's the part. Because when you can own that you believing you're flawed is false, and it's just a fear you have to acknowledge that it's a false belief, because it is not accurate or true in any way, shape, or form. So you have to acknowledge it, acknowledge the behavior, correct it, and take the steps. So I said, Rob, reach out to her, apologize, do what she asked you to do, and then let it go.
I did, and now I'm going on Oprah this week.
It was not Oprah. All right. So the first barrier is feeling fundamentally flawed. The second barrier is interesting. It's disloyalty and abandonment. So this is a false belief of, I cannot expand to my full success because it would cause me to end up alone, be disloyal to my roots, and leave behind the people from my past. So this is interesting because there's a lot of people that, you know, when you start, like for you, right? Let's say you got your neighborhood. You got all the people in your neighborhood.
You talking about New York? Or
yeah,
you talking about
in New York and Queens.
Growing up. Yeah.
And then, you know, little Robbie starts to get some success, and little Robbie becomes a doctor, and little Robbie goes on. There are a lot of people that don't feel like they could leave that world because you would be disowned by them. You would end up, you don't feel loyal, like Jenny from the block. Like J-Lo isn't a fucking, come on, let's be real. She's in Bel Air. Like Jenny from the block. So I would imagine that whole Jenny from the block thing came out of a fear of getting the, oh, you changed. Oh, you think you're so cool now because.
Do you have that? I don't have any of that.
I literally have none of that.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, but what I will say this though, because I moved out of a small town, and there you get this. Thank God I don't have this belief, because it would be triggered all the goddamn time. Because I moved out of a small town. We live a public life. We live a very different life than most of my friends I grew up with. And I can imagine and have heard things that are said that I don't care about, that, you think you're so cool because you blah, 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 whatever, fill in the blank, right? If that was a trigger for me, if I had that fear or false belief, I would shrink myself down to stay in my community, stay in that comfort zone that they're comfortable with me. So a lot of people that get this, you see the meme and it's like, yes, I've changed and that's the point. I get it, because most likely if that meme or that quote or whatever has ever really like struck you and you've really identified with it, you probably have this barrier.
Yeah, because you spot it, you got it.
Because the only way that would feel like you need to tell everybody, yes, I've changed and that's a point, is if you had this barrier, right? And so there's a lot of behaviors. It's like the guilt of success, the guilt of rising above your community keeps you down, right?
All right, I don't have that one. Give me another one.
All right, this is barrier 3. Believing that the more success brings a bigger burden. You could care less about a burden.
I don't care about it.
But it's okay.
As long as I don't have the burden, I don't care.
The false belief is I cannot expand to my full highest potential because I'd be an even bigger burden than I am now. So he gives an example.
Isn't this funny? Like, I'm listening to these. The first one, I'm like, oh shit, I got it. The next two, I'm like, who the fuck would have that?
I have a person in my head right now.
Who is it?
I'm not saying.
No, tell me.
No.
Tell me later.
I'll tell you later, but I'm not saying.
I thought we don't hold secrets from each other.
I am not you, and I'm also not going to describe this part. Like, Rob is the worst. He's like, I'm not going to tell you who it is. And he's like, you got 6 Emmys. They're a guy. I feel like I'm playing charades with him when he's...
Is there any reason why I sound like Grover from Sesame Street? I got 6 guys. They got 7 Emmys.
I got to do your voice somehow.
Why am I like a cab driver who smokes a cigar in New York?
Because you're a bigger bird.
All right, go ahead. What's the next one?
No.
The next one is what? What did you say?
Stop the Zed. So let me just give his story on this. So he tells this story about how... I'm going to fuck up the story. You're going to have to read the book. I'm going to do a really bad job of relaying this story.
We should title this podcast, You're Just Going to Have to Read the Book.
No, I mean, you're good at relaying stories. It's like somehow you catalog the entire story. I'm just going to screw that one up. But if you feel like you were a burden, okay, so I'm going to go back to, I have a person that always feels like a burden. Anything they want or anything they do or anything at all is a massive burden. And then they're when they want something, they're very meek. They're like, do you think it's okay if I have, and it's not my problem, but I have a very close person in my life that has this burden problem. And I can 100% see this burden being a barrier. Like, okay, for example.
I think I know who it is.
Okay.
And because I know who it is, I now see the issue.
Yeah. Let's say you're a kid, you grow up in a low income household, right? And you really want to go to college. You really want to make your parents proud. But you think, like, you always hear your parents arguing about money. You always hear your parents like, how can they make ends meet? But you have this college dream, right? And you don't know how you're going to make it happen. You having this dream of going to college and becoming a surgeon, right? Let's say you don't just want to go to college. Let's say you want to become a doctor and you want to go through and have this big, big, bold dream for yourself and step into your zone of genius. But your parents don't have any money. You always hear them arguing about money. They're always like trying to make ends meet. If you acknowledge and say, I'm going to rise up and become a surgeon, that could be feeling like that will be a bigger burden. Like, imagine you having no money and your kid comes and says, I want to do 32 years of university. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that your parents don't have. So that could feel like a massive burden. And you may never, you might not achieve that dream because it might hold you back.
What's next?
Okay, this is mine. Even acknowledging this is my burden makes me... Okay, barrier 4 is the
What is happening right
I
now?
don't like it. This is like a literal live portion of my burden. Okay, the crime of outshining. The false belief is I cannot expand to my full limit of success because if I did, I would outshine someone else and make them look or feel bad. And this one is a deep barrier for me. This is some shit for me. He said this, and then he said, this is so funny because I'm sitting here and I'm like, is that mine? Oh God, it feels so weird to say I'm scared to outshine someone. And he goes, in the book, he says something like, and even acknowledging this barrier makes you uncomfortable. And I was like, it does, because it feels like you're saying you shine. And I literally can't even say that I shine. So here's something that I'll give you one behavior that is the behavior. And I'll give you the difference between someone like me who has this issue, someone like Rob who does not. So we're at a party a year ago and we're in Italy, and someone hears Rob's voice at the party and says, do you like have a podcast or something? Because I think I listened to you on a podcast. And he said, I do. And then they started talking about the podcast and what episode they heard and blah, blah, blah. He loves that kind of shit. He, like, if you see him in the street, run over like the paparazzi because he loves this shit.
You know I'm standing right here, right?
Yeah, and you're not denying it.
Did you?
Because you do, right?
Did you?
Okay. So for me, it happens. And if you're listening and you've done this, it's not your fault. It's my barrier. It's my problem. There will be people that will come to me and be like, oh my God, I listened to that episode you did, or I read this blog, or I read this post, and my insides are quietly vomiting because it makes me so uncomfortable to have attention in that kind of way. It could be, I think it's because I don't want to be, so someone will be like, oh my God, I read that thing you wrote and it's amazing. And I'm like, it was, and I immediately deflect and I'm like, it wasn't that great. And there was a bunch of typos. And like, I'm like the deflector of the.
Let me ask you this though. Is this not, I'm not minimizing your giant problem here, but is this not a girl thing?
No.
Because I hear, let me fully form the question. When I overhear or just see women, if you say to a girl, oh my God, you're so beautiful, she'll be like, no. Or if you say like, oh my God, that dress is so cute on you, be like, oh, this whole thing. Like there is a one-downsmanship
right.
that I see women do. Do you think that this is a gender issue?
No, because I can write 400 names on this page right now and you would go, oh yeah, they don't have that problem.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that just some people have it. And again, it comes from early childhood, right? So like I was bullied as a kid. And so I was bullied because, and this is like, this is perfect, okay? This is exactly why I have this fucking problem. I was bullied in the 6th grade to the point of where like girls wanted to like fight me. You remember that bullshit in middle school? Like, we're going to fight you after school at 3:00. Like, what are we in? Like, I can't even, the Rat Pack. So I got bullied because I was in the 6th grade, and in my middle school, 6th grade was the youngest. I came in and a 7th grade boy thought I was cute and wanted to be my boyfriend. And the girls in the 7th grade didn't like it. And they were pissed. And so they bullied me. I mean, when I say bullied, I mean calling my house, saying they're going to beat me up if I go to school tomorrow, like just saying horrible things. Like middle school sucked until those girls were out of it. So when you have something like that, that's so young, and you know, this boy thinks I'm pretty, these girls are pissed he thinks I'm pretty. So what do I want to do? Do I want to walk around and be pretty? No, because I don't want to be attacked constantly. So those formative things that happen in school, and I can give you a million of them. I can give you things that, can I share the example about you and I that,
mm-hmm.
Okay, this has shown up in my life so many times. And again, I only react to it because I have this false belief. And so Rob and I, we were in our network marketing company. We were doing really well. We were asked to speak on stage, and we did. And we've spoken on stage a few times, and Rob always owns, what he does. And I do a good job too. See, I literally have to put myself behind you. Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, Rob owns it and I was okay. And we did this one event, and our topic in this event was not in Rob's wheelhouse. It was like strategy and numbers, and it was not in his wheelhouse. And so although we had this speech prepared, we did it, but we also took questions, and Rob was not in his wheelhouse on this. He didn't own this material. And so he got put on the back burner. And people throughout the event after kept saying, well, like Kim said, and he wasn't talked about. And then there was a moment where we were leaving, and I went out back and I said, can you hold my purse? I'm going to go use the restroom. And people came outside to talk to me, and they went over to Rob, and he was like, hi. And they said, where's Kim? And he was like, holy shit, I'm the guy sitting here holding the purse. He had a moment in that because he had never been not the star of the show. And he had never been in that position, and that he got upset. And we had a really big disagreement that night. We had a lot of conversation over it. There was a lot of tears shed on my behalf. And ultimately, it ended up with Rob launching his podcast. So everything happens for a reason, and we got through it. But that was a massive barrier for me to go. For the one time in my life, I actually shined, and I pissed off my husband, and he wasn't mad at me, but he was pissed. And so this literally says, I don't want to outshine him or her and make them look bad. I can't hold myself. I hold myself back because of their feelings.
This is an interesting story. By the way, every couple should have a podcast because it forces you to listen to the other person in a way that you would not listen to them in real life. Because I would have interrupted her 9 times and told her how that's not how it happened. But now that you're listening, I can't really do that. If
only I had video. Roll the tape.
So what's interesting to me about that experience, because as you were telling the story, I was kind of going back in my mind, and I was like, okay, well, why did I give a fuck? Like, what, you just gave it from your perspective. You can go to a party, right? And there's somebody will leave the same party and go, is the worst party in the world. And the other person will go, is the best party in the world, because it's where you're looking, right? What you're seeing. So it's perspective is everything. So my perspective in that moment was, I think it probably triggered the first one that you talked about being fundamentally flawed. So here I am on stage, and nobody gives a shit to ask me anything. I was, that was your perspective, and my perspective was that we were co-presenters, right? And at the end of the presentation, when we went to Q&A, not one person asked me any question. And then when it was over, when people came over, like you said, not one person. It was the first time in my life where I truly felt invisible, where I was like, oh my God, I can't even, it's almost like I am not standing on this stage. And when I look back and go, well, why did I give a fuck? I mean, who cares? Looking back retrospectively, I felt flawed. I felt like I didn't have value. I felt like I wasn't worth anything. So I took my ball and said, fuck this business, and I'm going to start a podcast, right? So in the end, it actually wound up happening in a positive way, as most things in life.
Well, but it happened so we can work that out, because also, so your barrier was hit, fundamentally flawed. My barrier was hit because when you said it was the first time you felt invisible, I wanted to say welcome to the club because I'm always in the background, but it just deflection. So I'm like, welcome to the club. I'm just a backup dancer, right? But I just wrote down, I have made myself invisible because of this barrier. I have sent myself to the back. For example, so that happened, right? Then you launch a podcast, you launch the mastermind. So this is Rob's baby. This mastermind was Rob's baby, the platinum experiences, all the things. So we go on this thing. Now we're coming out of this stage situation, right? With outshining, and Rob needs to feel enough, and I don't want to outshine. And I remember it, oh my God, we were at the dinner in Boston after we did Tom Brady, TB12, all that stuff. We're at the dinner in Boston, and Lori Harder gets up and she does a little speech to thank you for everything you've put together and tell you how magical it was. And then she goes, and we all know none of this could have happened without Kim. And I was like, fuck me. Like, do not mention my name. I am literally here under the table. Like, can he just have his spotlight? Please, 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 please do not bring me. Like, I was panicked and so I deflect. No. I'm just here to support. I'm just in the background because I don't want to outshine. The other thing that was hard was when you started your podcast, they said you should do a couple episodes a week. And we used to have a podcast before you started the Rob Murgatroyd Show and Work Hard, Play Hard. We had one years ago together called the Jet Set Insider, and people loved it. It was a video podcast, and we would just tell funny travel stories. And it was a fun show. People liked us together. So Rob and I were like, well, maybe we could do an episode together. And everybody was like, no one wants to hear a husband and a wife talk. And we're like, I don't know. I mean, we've done it before and it was kind of good. Well, then when Friday Date started pulling the same numbers as the interview show, I was like, oh, I was like, not again. Because I knew it would be an issue. And it's still sometimes, I'm over it for the most part because I'm like, no.
When you say it would be an issue, what do you mean?
I just felt like if Friday Date, because I was involved and it was us together versus your interview show, if our numbers were the same or even better, that would be a version of outshining. And we hit it. You were like, well, why am I even doing the show? And I'm like, because it has the literal same numbers as Friday, and it was just, and it always feels for me, I'm glad we're in this therapy session. It always feels for me like I'm walking on eggshells trying to not outshine. So that's why when I get approached with like, oh my God, I listened to this or I saw this, if you ever approach me like that, you will see me squirm because it's uncomfortable for me. But now I'm identifying it. I'm shining a light on it. And he said something that here's what he said that is very, very helpful. He talked about deflection, and this hit me. So when someone says to me, you did such a great job with that, and I deflect it, that person, if like I'm an energy person. So if someone's coming over to you and they're like, oh my God, this was amazing. This, made so much sense to me. This struck a chord in me. They are trying to give me their positive energy. If I go, it wasn't great. If I deflect, I literally put up a shield and block their positive energy. I am stopping the flow of abundance and positive energy by deflecting. When he said that hit me between the eyeballs.
Yeah, well, more than that, though, you're actually robbing them of the gift of being able to connect with you on that level. Like, we all have people that we admire at a very deep level. And when we get a chance to share with them how much they've impacted us, there's a connection. If it's not weird and fangirl and fanboy, but there's a connection. Like, I'll give you an example. We had a really rough week with Gia. She had our 16-year-old Maltese poodle. She had a tumor on her spleen, and she had to have emergency surgery to remove her spleen. And the panic and fear that sets in when you have somebody that's been in your life, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys if you have dogs, cats, or whatever, but I remember, because it was yesterday, saying to the vet, like, thank you. And she's like, you're welcome. And then I was like, I didn't know. No,
you didn't accept that.
No. I need you to feel this because you saved her fucking life. Thank you. And I didn't want to be robbed the moment to connect with her in that level. And I think that this falls into the same category with you. When people are reading your blog or they're acknowledging you for your part in creating these events, or they're saying you did a great job, on stage, or, whatever it is, there's something about what you did. And if we can go a layer deeper, there's something about what you did that inspired them, that motivated them, that they want to have perhaps in their own life, a version of. And if you deflect it, you kill it.
Well, and that's what he said. He said, when you deflect, it actually keeps you from expanding. So here I am trying to grow into my zone of genius. And when I'm doing things that are allowing me to grow, I'm literally sabotaging myself and stopping the flow of positive energy and stopping the growth by deflecting it. Let me give you 2 examples to go back with what you just said about Gia. So 2 things. If you had the barrier number 3, that success brings you a bigger burden, or this feeling of being a bigger burden, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If that's something you struggle with, Gia, we walked into the emergency room yesterday, or to the vet's office. We were in the waiting room, and there was like 4 other people in the waiting room. This person that I mentioned about the burden would have held it together and avoided all contact with those people so she wouldn't put the burden on them.
You mean the burden of the other people that were in the waiting room?
Of our emotional, our fragile emotional state at that moment.
Instead of connecting in
Instead
community.
of connecting. I'll give you how fucked up my brain is on outshining, because this is in no way is my dog's tumor better than your dog's tumor or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? This is stupid. But I wanted to message a friend of mine. Oh, this make me cry. I wanted to message a friend of mine. This is how fucked up I am. No, I wanted to message a friend of mine to share what I was going through. But she's going through things that are
I see.
So much worse. And I felt like me sharing that my dog was in this state would feel to her like, are you kidding me with what I'm going through?
I get that.
And so I didn't share it.
I get that.
But that's the thing. Like, shouldn't I be able to share that?
You should be able to share it, but I see how it manifests in all types of different areas.
Like, and that sucks, because that's how this can screw up your connection with other people. It's how it can create resentment. It's how it can, like, that's why this is not just about success. This is about love, which includes friendship, not just like romantic love, creativity, business success. Because if I can't share one of the most sad moments in my life with one of my really good friends, because I'm afraid that in some way it will outshine, or that she'll feel, not that it outshines, like I said, but it'll make them feel negative about my situation.
You know what the irony about this is? The irony is that it's such a self-imposed belief. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if you said this to that person, she very well, knowing what I know about her, she very well could have said, oh my God, what you are going through now, this has got to be horrible. I know what it's like. I've been through this myself. And it's terrifying. She must be terrified. She could have looked at it from the perspective of Gia. She could have looked at it from the perspective of a pet that she's had. Or she could have looked at it.
And she most likely would have.
And she probably would have. So, okay. Well, listen, this is a great book. And Kim, you did a great job crying on cue. This is going to be great for the ratings. And
oh my God, Robert, stop it.
I am Barbara Walters signing off here. By the way, does Barbara Walters make everybody cry? Oh, she's dead now. I feel terrible.
Let me just say this to wrap it up, because we talked a lot about the barriers, and I feel like we're putting everybody in the position like, what the fuck do we do about it? So you're shining the light on it, but here's the thing. You have to make a daily commitment, literally daily commitment, to say, I commit to learning about my upper limit behaviors, and I commit to having a good time while I learn about them. So you have to allow yourself. He said something else too that was so good. Let me give you one. I don't know. Listen, at the end of the day, he said, you have to be willing to have an amazing life all the time. You have to be willing to be committed to having full love, creativity, and success in all areas of life at all times. And so that's a thing. So it's a daily commitment.
What was that sentence again? I commit to learning about my upper limit.
So he has these mantras, right? So it's, I commit to learning about my upper limit behaviors and having a good time while I learn about them. So it is not, oh my God, there's another one. Woe is me. Holy shit. I'm so because like, let's say, Rob, let's say when I pointed out to you that you didn't return that woman's email or do what you were supposed to do because you had an upper limit problem, and you just went, oh my God, I'm so flawed. Why do I suck? Like, that literally would be feeding into the problem. You have to acknowledge it and go, this is an upper limit problem. I'm going to fix it.
Got it. Because he's trying to change the behavior.
And the next time someone approaches me and is like, I listened to that episode, blah, 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 and I need to fully accept it and just say thank you.
I love it. Are you okay?
Yeah.
That's it, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye. Have you ever made a vision board by cutting out pictures of the beach house you wanted, the Ferrari, maybe even put your head on top of the dream body that you cut out, and then maybe you cut out some words like abundance that looks like Jeffrey Dahmer wrote it from prison?
And then you hung it in your bathroom or maybe your closet, only to find it a few months later covered in dust behind the dresser. Yeah, that doesn't work because you're missing the most important part, the vision.
So over the last 5 years, we've created and manifested multiple visions and have gone from working 12-hour days in our physical business that no longer excited us to living the life of our dreams every day.
Using our simple exercises and effective manifestation processes, we've sold our business that was no longer inspiring, created 5 new streams of income that we love, and moved our family to live the life of our dreams in Florence, Italy.
The Ultimate Vision Board course for couples will get you and your partner on the same page with undeniable clarity in your vision together and help you manifest your dream life. Check out the link in the description to learn more.